Okay, home racing fans, we're going to do a little advanced modifications. We're talking about installing some aftermarket guides into the Pioneer cars, the Legends car we're going to work with right off the bat, but this also works, and I'll show you it works for the Trans Am cars as well. I have my little Camaro right here. So the mods that we're going to talk about here, we're going to be able to do here as well. As we know, these guides are just really loose in these cars. You know, the Trans Am cars are the same way. There's just a lot of free play here, and the Legends is the same. We already covered that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of advanced tuning. It's not too hard. I'm going to get started here. We're going to show you how to use some adapters and things like that. So let's sit back and see what kind of mess we can make. Okay, we're going to talk parts here for just a little bit. Most of this is very self-explanatory, and you tuners out there probably have plenty of it, but just a quick overview. I'll be using the SEC braided wire, the silicone-coated wire. I just like this wire, good conductivity, flexibility, that kind of thing. In the background, you see I have some guide spacers here that they just released, different thicknesses. We'll show you how those come into play later on. A couple of different adhesives. Of course, we'll touch on that later. As far as attaching the wires to the guide, I'm a set screw guy, so I got some of the M2 set screws here. Now, one of the major components, of course, is these guide adapters by CG Slot Cars. Now, you guys that are advanced tuners, you probably have plenty of plastic. You could make these yourself. That's fine. I have these on hand for the Skeletra cars and repairs I do. I've got a drawer full of them, so I'm going to utilize those. They're 3D printed. You know, they do the job. For the braid, I'm just using standard tin copper braid. That's just my preference for our wood track. Finally, the guides themselves, I'll be using this larger guide here, the Universal EVO Big PCS guide by Slotting Plus. I have to tell you, this is the best value in guides in the hobby as far as I'm concerned. You get two of these guides for the price of one slotted or any other, and I really like the fact that it's designed to be trimmed. Okay, the thickness of the blade is good for our routed tracks, and you see these serrations. It's designed to give you a guide, but we're not to trim them anyway. And we're not afraid of trimming and doing any of these things. So that's been my go-to guide for quite a few years now. We're also going to cover, though, the standard Universal Sport guide that they make for those maybe with plastic tracks or shallower slots or whatever, or if you don't really feel like doing any trimming. So I'm going to show both guides. But anyway, this is a quick overview of the parts. So let's just start making a mess. Okay, we're going to talk about guide adapter modifications and why. We've already kind of shown you this before, but the design of the guide bulkhead here is kind of a stair-step design. You're flush here, you drop down once, then you drop down again, and then the semicircle of material here kind of covers partially of the guide hole opening here. So the sleeve on the stock adapter, it just won't slip on here, you know, as a snap-in fit like it would for the Skeletra cars. That's okay. It's pretty easy, you know, to fix. So in other words, here's the way they come. They have this little lip on there. And what I'm doing is I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm just trimming it off flush. So again, you advanced guys out there with material, you could easily make this, drill your own hole. I've done it before with plastic. I just have these here on hand for quick fixes on my Skeletra cars, and that's what I'm going to use. All right, on to the next step. All right, I've already modified this chassis a little bit. We had to open up this hole all the way around the chassis a little bit because, as you can see, the front bulkhead of the guide in stock form, these chassis, the diameter is just a little bit too small, and your guides will rub. So what I simply did was, again, use a hobby knife, and I just scraped the material away just like that, just carefully, and I just did it until, and I test fit until the guide turns freely. Now, you can use a Dremel, you can do it by hand with sandpaper, but a good old-fashioned X-Acto is hard to beat for this application. So I know it is a chassis mod, but for those of you that are tuning, you're not scared of this because in slot car tuning, a little plastic will fall. So anyway, now we've got this ready. We've got our adapter ready. It's time to glue it in place. All right, it's time to glue in our adapters. If you'll notice, I have the guide in the car upside down. I'm using that as an alignment for the adapter. Works pretty well for me. As far as adhesive goes, like I said, you do what you're comfortable with. I'm just going to use a little bit of good old-fashioned testers here and just a very, very small drop, which I'll do that right now. Just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot here. Just a little bit, well, maybe a little bit more than that. Just a little bit. Right there. You don't need to get crazy. Your adapter, there's a rough side and a shiny side. And as they say, keep the shiny side up. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to put this in there. And it's nice and aligned. And that's it. Now, on this car, on the Legends car, I'm using the thicker 3/32 adapter. Now, on the Camaro, I've already installed the slightly thinner 1/16 right there. I already glued it in overnight. Now, as you can see, there's a gap right there in between the adapter and the top of this, the bulkhead here, the original. You know what? That's fine. I've already tested this. It's nice and strong. That gap isn't hurting anything. You have plenty of support for the guidepost from top to bottom. So anyway, now that you've got this glued in place, it's dried overnight. Now if you want to, you can lightly flow some super glue on the edges of the guide. So right here and here, some super thin CA super glue right in there, and this adapter is not going anywhere. Now just be careful with your super glue as always, but I'm just going to glue this one just a little bit, and basically it's done, and we're going to start putting it together. Little small thing I'd like to share with you, but it's important. On these guides, you can see these 3 little circles here. This looks like where they pulled it from the mold. There's some flash molding right here on each one. And if you flush mount this guide without at least one shim, this is going to hang up. It's going to cause it to catch a little bit, as you can see with my knife. So you're going to want to take the same knife, just shave off that material, shave it off smooth, give it a few scrapes, you'll be good to go. Okay, so I finally mounted the guide in the chassis here. I used the screw that comes with the Sliding Plus guides. Again, I'm using the 3/32 adapter out here because we have the flush braid. And I got the ride height just like I like it. The fronts are touching. They're not really supporting a lot of weight. That's just the way I like it. You set it up the way you want. That's why I use the shims. SCC has all sorts of shims. I got a 10,000 in here. It works just fine. That's exactly the right height. You test it for your own track. You use a setup lock if you're more comfortable with that. But anyway, I got the right height just the way that I like it. Now we're going to install the wires and give it a road test. Real quick, I want to try to show you the end result compared to the stock form. This is just zero. There's almost nothing here. No free play, no slop. We got a very good smooth rotation here, and that's exactly what we wanted. So now we have a really solid platform. Again, you know, stiffening this up. The benefits when you're going into the corner, you don't have the guide leaning over, de-slotting. A sloppy guide can lead to bad conductivity out here on the track, dog tracking down the straights. So you want this to be as solid as possible, yet have really good, smooth, free rotation. And I feel we've accomplished that. So anyway, that was the end result. Now we will get the wires hooked up and do our road test. All right, we have our wires installed now. As you can see the way I routed them, you can do it any way you want, but as you can see, I had them out here to the edges, but the inside of the body was just barely touching them. It wasn't seating all the way, so I had to move them in. Now, I like to use UV glue to secure the wires. You could use tape, just like it had before, any way you want, but it's easily removed. I just peeled it right off, and I moved it over. So, hey, you know, that's what I do for you guys. There's just no sacrifice too great, right? Anyway, we've also done the mods, the side-by-side on the axle. as we did. We showed you here on the 22 car. So that slop is gone there as well. And then finally, I did the Paul Gates tire mod. I've been running some test laps. I got this done and all trued up. So let's cover everything real quick. I know we were talking about the guide, but we've sanded the wheels, trued the wheels, put the stock fronts back on, trued those. Got rid of that side-to-side free play by expanding these bushings to the outer limits here in the chassis. So we got rid of that. And then we did the wheels back here, of course, and the aftermarket tires. And then finally, now we've got our brand new guide in. And I got to tell you, this thing is just rock solid. So anyway, I think you're going to be really surprised with the lap times. Remember, this was the stock car, the white one that we used that was box stock in the road test, against the blue one that we did the mods on. So now let's see who's boss. Well, that's pretty impressive. Now we've got a best lap at 2.870. That's a significant improvement over the old time. So just a little bit of work here and there, and we just keep getting faster. Okay, well, I'm pretty happy with the results. This is a very solid car now. We've gotten rid of all that slop in there from all the modifications up front, so I'm really happy. Was it worth it? Absolutely. At least I think so. I'm a little OCD about my front guide. I don't like a lot of slop up there for obvious reasons, so it really stabilized the car. Just a much smoother car, you know, all around, in the corners, down the straight, everything. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I know it was a little long-winded, but I'll tell you, it doesn't take that long to do the mods. You could do both of these cars, I'd say, within 30-40 minutes, and you'd be right on the track. So anyway, if you guys do try it, please let me know. Comment here on the YouTube channel, or chime in on the forum and let me know what your findings are.